Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm Terry Lajoie, your host with Keller Williams Coastal and Lakes and Mountains Realty. And I've got my co-host here, Shaun Sanville with Oak Hill Acquisitions. And today we're going to talk a little bit about short sales, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, a topic I know somewhat about, but not a whole heck of a lot.
All right, well, I'm going to start with you, actually.
Okay.
Because there are deals that you run into that don't make sense.
Yep.
In your world.
Yeah.
And you'll call me and say, this is a short sale option. So let's start there. What makes it, from when you meet with somebody and have those conversations with them and you go through all of your scenarios that might work, from your perspective, what makes it come back to me as a short sale?
Yeah, so I think it comes into how much equity they have, realistically. Okay. And usually when I get involved, they're usually end up having to sell, right? So whether that's a cash offer with me or us taking it on the market as a partnership or something like that, we usually decide that selling is the best way to go. And when I go through all my scenarios and selling it cash doesn't work and selling it on the market doesn't work because there's not enough equity and they'd have to essentially write a check out of their own pocket to sell the house, that's where I'm like, okay, it's time to bring in Terry because there's not enough equity to sell it, and that's basically how I understand short sales.
Okay. So once you bring me in, one of the first things I'm doing, number one, I have a conversation with you, and kind of to what you just said, why are you thinking it belongs as a short sale?
Yep.
And then generally you and I will go and meet with a homeowner and have a conversation with them, because you've already kind of opened that door for me.
Yep.
And really look at what their situation is. What is the house? What is the house worth?
Yeah.
And then what do they owe on it?
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, you already know what's owed as far as the foreclosure goes.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at that and saying, okay, what other options do we have? And sometimes you and I will kick it around and be like, okay, well, what about this or what about that? And see if there really is another solution.
Yeah.
Because short sales, they're not fun.
No.
Especially for the homeowners. And they end up having to do a lot more documentation.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I have to make sure that they're willing to do, because the bank wants full financials. They want to really dig in and say, why is this a hardship? What is the hardship?
Yeah.
And so when they're doing a short sale, the first thing I'm going to do is pull in my short sale negotiator. So I have a negotiator. You need a special license for that I don't have. And so she comes in and works with the bank. And so she's the one who negotiates back and forth with the bank on behalf of the seller. And so she's going to come in, she's going to give us a short sale package, generally about 1 inch to 2 inches, depending on the situation and the lender, because they're lender specific in a lot of cases. She's got a generic one and then there's lender specific ones. And so that goes back to the homeowner. And that's kind of my first clue. Are they going to really be willing to move forward with it? Not everybody wants to fill out all that paperwork. Not everybody wants to really dig into the finances and pull all of the bank statements and everything that the bank's going to require. And so that's kind of first step, is really, is this an option?
Yeah.
Is it an option as far as the bank is concerned? Maybe yes, but is the homeowner willing? Because, and you can kind of talk to this too, by the time somebody gets to that position where they've already talked to the investors and the investors are like, nope, this doesn't work for us. And now you're bringing them to me as a short sale. They've been through a lot.
Yeah, they've been through a lot, but I think we do a good job of kind of helping them see reality, see the forest through the trees, so to speak, and like letting them know, like, hey, like, this doesn't work for an investor. So like, this really is your last best option, because the only other option is going to foreclosure.
Right.
And I mean, we've talked about it before, all the repercussions that happen with foreclosure. And yes, with a short sale, you don't walk away with any money in your pocket.
Sometimes.
They can?
Sometimes.
Okay. But the majority of the time, they're probably not walking away. The loan's getting wiped away, basically.
Right.
For less than what's owed.
Yes.
So a lot of the times, there are those rare cases where they do walk away with something, right? But the majority of the time, they're not getting any money in their pocket. And so like, it really comes down to us to let them know like why that's beneficial. Because a lot of people will just say, oh, I can't make anything on this. Like, I'll just let it go to foreclosure. And I think that's where me and you do a really great job of coming in and being like, well,
it's not that simple.
It's not that simple. And you need to think about next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, because you're probably going to want to start over after you get out of this scenario. You want to be able to start over fresh and not have skeletons in the closet, I guess.
Right. So you just opened up a lot of information.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to them not getting any money.
Yeah.
With a short sale, they're not going to get money from necessarily from the sale of the house.
Okay.
So there's no equity for them to get.
Yeah.
Because they owe more than what the house is worth.
Yeah.
Some of the banks, and it's a fair number, will actually pay them relocation fees.
Okay. That's good to know.
So my short sale negotiator, every deal that she puts in includes money for relocation.
Okay.
Because the reality is they have to relocate.
Yeah.
They can't, that doesn't come without a cost.
Yeah.
And the banks know that. And by doing the relocation, a lot of times people leave in a better state of mind.
Yeah.
And don't do as much damage to the property.
That's good. Yeah.
Which makes it easier to sell the property,
Absolutely.
easier for an investor to come in and renovate it and then resell it later. And so that's a big piece.
Yeah. I didn't even know they did that.
Yes.
I thought it was just they're basically being courteous enough to say, hey, we'll take less than what's owed on the loan. I didn't know that they included relocation sometimes.
Well, the reality is banks don't want the property.
Yeah, I know that for sure.
They don't want to own the property.
Yeah.
Right? And so if they can work with a homeowner to help them relocate, get the property sold to an investor that is at a price that an investor is willing to take it and do the work for it, and the homeowner on the way out doesn't do a whole bunch more damage because they're angry,
Yeah.
that's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the pieces. And so as we're kind of working through this, you look at it and you say, okay, well, what does that look like? And I always tell people short sales are short on dollars, not short on time. They don't happen quickly in most cases. My short sale negotiator has done them in 30 days, but that's the oddball.
Yeah.
I've had them, I'm going to say the average is probably about 6 months
Okay.
to get the bank to approve it. Most of the banks have either a committee or a board or some body that has to get together and review them, and they'll send requests back to us. So I have one going right now, and they had the only thing that they've asked for so far is the documentation, and then they sent an appraiser out.
Yeah.
The appraisal came in high, and so we're going to dispute that.
Okay.
But that's all like just steps in the process. But in the meantime, the property owner is there. They're still living in the property. They're still packing their things and getting ready for the move because they have to move. And in the meantime, we're just going back and forth with paperwork.
Yep. And the foreclosure is stopped indefinitely until this either gets approved or denied, correct?
Sometimes.
Okay.
The banks can do one of two things. So if the bank stops and cancels an auction, they have to start from the beginning again. And so some banks will do that, some won't.
Yep.
Some will just say, we have an auction date, we're going to push it out 30 days, push it out 30 days, push it out 30 days. When you have a bank that's pushing the auction 30 days at a time, it's really important that the short sale negotiator is on top of that.
Yeah.
Because 30 days is not a big window.
No.
And it's very easy for it to get really close really quick. And then all of a sudden you're going to auction when you have an active short sale going.
Yeah.
So it's really important that the short sale negotiator is really on top of that, and that they're talking to the bank on a regular basis. The negotiator I use literally calls the bank every single day.
Good.
And I started working with her way back 20 years ago when I first got into the business. At that point, she had over 100 short sales going at a time.
Wow.
And she was calling the banks
Every day.
every day.
So she was jam-packed.
Yes. And every week she gave me a report
Yeah.
for all of the short sales that I had going. I think the most I ever had going at one point was 20. I had 20 short sales at a time going.
Wow.
And I was calling my clients on a regular basis, at least once a week.
Updating them, yep.
And I want to talk a little bit about the emotional factor for the homeowners too.
Yeah.
Because once we start down this path, one of the things that I tell all of my clients, but especially if they're going through a short sale, is I'm here if you need to vent.
Yeah.
My only request is that if you're going to call or text, you start that conversation with, I'm not mad at you, I just need to vent. And then you can go rent to your heart's content.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. You know, and they need to get that out. Like that frustration, the anger, all of the emotion that they're feeling, it's important that they get that out.
Yeah.
And they're not mad at me, they're not mad at you. In a lot of cases, they're not mad at the bank. They're mad at the situation.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated. And so being able to kind of let that frustration out and validate what they're feeling, you know. I mean, I had a conversation not long ago with somebody, and, you know, they texted and they're like, I'm not mad at you. I'm like, okay, good. And then I got a text this long.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, my response is validation. Like, it's okay for you to feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to be frustrated. It's all of the emotion that they're feeling is okay.
Yeah, because the majority of people, and I'll just speak to this from what I've seen, I would say probably 95, 98% of people that are in this situation, it's usually due to an outside circumstance that they didn't have much, if any, control over. It's very rarely do we see people get in this situation purely just due to like lifestyle inflation where, you know, they spent more than they made type of thing.
Right.
A lot of it is outside circumstances that they just can't control. I mean, we've seen everything from just like everything in the house just starts breaking at once and you're just trying to keep up with it to make sure your family still has heat, electricity, all that stuff, to one medical bill after another, and then, you know, a job loss while you're still getting medical bill. Every scenario.
Right.
And it's very rarely, you know, their fault. Most people don't choose to just not pay.
Right. I think I've only had one. 22 years in the business, I've only had one. The market had dropped, and they used their wife's credit to go buy the new house and just let this one go. And I went, okay. Like, I personally don't like that.
Yeah.
And I tend to not work with people like that, you know, because I'm just an honest person. And you know.
I've only seen one scenario where it was purely just lifestyle inflation. But other than that, it's always been medical, family, job loss. It's been something.
Medical's a big one.
Yeah.
We actually talked about that last week with Tony that was here, and how the cost of medical puts a lot of people into foreclosure.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, credit cards can do it too.
Yep.
People, you know, they get the phone call every day, and they're like, so they pay that bill instead of the mortgage. But short sales are hard, and, you know, like, depending on what the situation is, I've seen them be really quick. And, you know, there's been, you know, other situations where they've taken 2 years. You know, I've had them, you know, like, sometimes you get an investor that's willing to write an offer right up front. And, you know, just as a side note, it's very much unethical and not legal to present offers to a bank that are not going to ever close.
Yeah.
Just being very clear about that, that's not okay. And so you and I are really careful about that, right? We work with investors who really can close. If you're writing an offer and I'm going to present it to a bank, that offer can close, and that investor will close on it. And that's a big piece. Loan fraud is definitely not anything to play with.
No.
Like, we avoid that at all costs. And, you know, so you bring an investor in that can buy it for cash and close on it, and hopefully give you a reasonable offer. And a reasonable offer is an offer that is reasonable for the house in its current condition.
Yeah.
Taking into account how much money is going to go into it. And you do that all day long, right?
Yeah.
And we walk through houses all the time, and sometimes it's like you're looking and saying, okay, this is the list that I have, and then I come in behind you and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to add these items to it as well. And to find out, okay, what is the actual cost to bring this house back?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars because the houses are in such disrepair, right? So I think it's probably maybe a bit easier for people that are in that situation to stomach that low offer because they know there's nothing tied to it where they're going to get paid. So they're just like, this is actually what a real offer would look like for this house.
Right.
But yeah, it's difficult in those situations. And I typically we look at every other option before short sale, and we will get very creative with things to try to make something happen. But there are those rare cases where there's just not enough equity.
Right. Or no equity.
Yeah. Yeah, no equity.
So,
I mean, it's very rarely though do we see anything like that where I haven't seen a lot of no equity situations personally. I've seen like very little equity, but not a no equity where the property's almost underwater.
well, and one of the things that happens with short sales too is, and if you run into something like this, let me know, because I'm happy to do some research. When I start doing a short sale, I'm looking at, okay, well, this is what the mortgage statement says, right? That tells us what is owed to the bank. What it doesn't tell us is what other liens have been put against the property.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece because the bank needs to deal with that too. They don't necessarily need to pay them. Some of those creditors aren't going to get paid. But when it's tax liens, whether it's IRS taxes, local taxes,
Second positions,
they tend to get very little. You could have $100,000 second mortgage, that's a home equity line, and if they get a couple $1,000s,
they're lucky.
They're lucky.
Wow.
Yeah. Years ago when I was doing a ton of short sales,
Yeah.
the average second lien holder got $3,000.
Wow.
And if it was a small lien, they got $1,000.
Wow.
Like their max that they would pay was like $3,000 back then. I haven't run into those recently,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure kind of what they're doing today. But yeah, back in the last recession, it was $3,000 was their cap. That's all they got. And
That's tough.
so, and that's second. If you're a third, fourth, or fifth,
You're not getting anything.
you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And I've got one going right now that's got three or four additional liens on it. And so that has to be dealt with. Like
Yeah.
you can't pass clean title without standing liens.
Yeah.
So they're going to get cleared. The question is how?
Yeah.
Are they going to get written off? Are they going to,
Get negotiated down.
negotiated? Are they? Yeah. And that's between the bank and the lien holders. And so all of that factors into how long this takes. And I think the fastest one I've had was 30 days. The longest one I had spanned 3 years. So
That's got to be like a good and bad thing, right? Because people do need time to like relocate, right? But at some point, they're probably going to want to get out of there sooner rather than later.
here's the challenge with the long ones.
Yeah.
I've had entirely too many and seen too many where a homeowner just packs up and leaves in the middle of the night. And they're just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
They get frustrated.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I'm done, I'm out. And, that doesn't make the problem go away.
Yeah.
The problem is still the problem, and it still needs to be resolved. And so that's one of the things that used to happen. I haven't seen it recently, but, people get frustrated
Yeah.
when it takes a long time and you're going back and back and back, and every month they have to update their financials. Well, you do that, 2.5, 3 years, and you're pretty sick of it.
Yeah, it gets annoying really quickly.
It does. And it's like, I don't have enough money to pay the bills. Like, what else do you want from me?
Yeah, why do I need to keep filling out financial statements and paperwork after paperwork? It's like, I've told you the scenario.
Right.
Just go off that.
But that's part of it, right? And and the banks have to look at the full situation and say, this is a big write-off for them. They're losing not only just the interest that they would have made as their profit, they're losing principal balance.
Yeah.
And
they're losing money doing this.
right.
So it's a big ask.
And not only are they losing money on the loan, let's talk about the expenses that the bank's going to pay.
Yeah.
Because the bank's going to pay the realtor commissions. The bank's going to pay the transfer tax. Sometimes they negotiate with the state and don't pay that. But in most cases, they're going to pay the transfer tax. They're going to pay all of the closing costs for that seller. And you and I both know the seller side is where there's a fairly large chunk of
Closing costs are expensive.
They are.
Yeah.
Either side.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to pay all of those expenses on top of it, plus what they're short on the mortgage for.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that they actually allow short sales when you really think about it.
What's the alternative?
Yeah, not getting any, or the alternative is the loan still staying on their books somehow and them not clearing it so that they can go lend more money.
Right, and they end up calling it a bad debt. Well,
Yeah.
okay, but they end up writing off more.
Yeah.
At least with a short sale, we've got a buyer for it. That buyer is ready, willing, and able to buy the property, usually a cash buyer. So as soon as we get the approval, we can close on that loan, or not on the loan, but on the sale with a cash. Generally, it's a cash buyer that's going to buy them.
Yeah.
I've had buyers that bought, and I will tell you, when you have a buyer that's buying a short sale, I have a dear friend of mine bought a short sale, and 9 months we waited, and every week I called, and every week she cried, and sometimes in the middle she would call me crying, and she's like, am I ever going to get the house? And then periodically the contract comes up, right? Because the closing date is passing and you have to extend, and every time we would have to extend, I would ask the question, do you want to extend it? Do you want to withdraw? And they're like, I don't know, what should I do? I'm like, I can't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But here's my question. Are you okay with somebody else owning this house? No. Then you have your answer.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, it's about asking the right question.
Yeah.
The first question is, do you want to extend, yes or no? And when they come back and ask me what they should do, it's not about me telling them what to do. It's really about asking the right question so they can decide what's right for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Have we touched on kind of the repercussions of like what does actually happen if somebody goes to foreclosure? Because I think that's a big part of this is like when somebody gets to that point, it's like either short sale or foreclosure.
Right.
Like I think we should probably touch on, or maybe have you touch on why short sale is better. Like what is the repercussions of foreclosure so people can fully understand what they're avoiding by going down the short sale route?
Yep. So with a foreclosure, number one, there's no expiration date on what's owed to the bank. So you get an inheritance 30 years from now, the bank can be, yep, you owe us. That money it never goes away. That money that's owed never goes away.
Yeah.
With the short sale, they've accepted less. It's kind of like when you settle a credit card for less. They've accepted less, so therefore there's an end.
Yeah.
And that gets closed. With the deficiency on a bankruptcy, on a foreclosure, there's no end date on that. They can come back anytime. The only way that I'm aware of to get rid of that is a bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy then stays, it's a hard no on any financing for about a year.
Yeah.
And then you got about 3 years before you can get an FHA mortgage. I think it's 7 to 10 before you get a conventional again. But that bankruptcy stays on people's credit it can stay up to 11 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time to have a bankruptcy on your credit report. And while that's out there and sitting on your credit report, your scores only go up so far.
Yeah.
You can't get that.
You can't get back
credit.
to like a good credit standing.
Correct.
So
Much harder.
The bank can come after you pretty much for the rest of your life until that money is paid off. What are some other things? Like how does it impact their ability to get financing in the future? Like, can we talk about any of that?
I kind of touched on that because I think it's 3 years before you can get an FHA mortgage. FHA is the first one to come back.
Okay.
So I think it's about 3 years before you get an FHA, but then there's always mortgage insurance with an FHA. So there's extra fees that go with that. And then I think it's either 7 or 10 years before you can go to a conventional.
Yeah.
Even if you already have an FHA, you can't refinance
into conventional
until you hit that 7 to 10 years out. And that's a long time.
Yeah. And another thing that I've started seeing is when you're going to rent, landlords are asking on their applications now, have you been in foreclosure?
Yes.
So
or have you filed bankruptcy?
Or have you filed bankruptcy? So when folks are going through this situation and trying to decide, what thing is right for them, if they're thinking that, oh, well, I'm done with this house, I'm just going to let it go and I'm just going to go rent. You may not get approved for a rental because you don't look like a financially safe bet. I mean, even me being a landlord, right? Like, even all things apples to apples, right? If you have one tenant or tenant applicant that is the exact same as the other on paper, but one has a foreclosure, one doesn't, well, that's almost like somebody having a, like a 750 credit score versus like a 500.
I have a job and I don't.
Yeah, it's showing the ability to actually pay. So that is a big thing that people need to take into consideration, because I've had to have that conversation with folks where they're like, I'm just going to let it go. It's like, okay, well, what's the plan after you let it go? I'm just going to go rent somewhere.
Right.
That may not be a viable option for you. So what happens if you can't go rent somewhere? What's the plan?
And as well as I do, there are differences in who the landlord is.
Yes.
The landlord who has that conversation with somebody and says, look, I can't rent to you because, versus the landlord that will take the people who have foreclosures and bankruptcies and that on their record. They may not always be the properties that you want to live in.
Yeah, they're going to be not the nicest, we'll say.
So that's something for people to think about.
Absolutely.
But we're almost out of time. This was a fun conversation, as always.
It always flies by.
It does. So we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you back here next week.